Good afternoon, Douglas County citizens. I'm Mark Alcarez, your District 4 Commissioner. I appreciate you taking the time to join me on this community conversations. We have today, I've asked our Attorney Coleman and Chris Humphreys would Elevate Douglas to join us because I've been receiving quite a few phone calls and some emails, and also I've seen some social media in regards to the notice of the hearing of the state of Georgia versus the Development Authority of Douglas County of Foxhall LLC. This is in regards to the bonds issued, and I'm gonna not get into this too far. This is gonna be just a educational, and if there's, I don't know if it's available, if people are available to ask questions in the chat, you're welcome to. We'll try to get to everyone. This is going to be a short meeting, probably try and hold this till, a little bit around 3 o'clock, because we do have some other meetings we have to get to shortly after this. But I'm going to start here with this is what I seen and what I sent to you, Attorney Coleman, and Chris. We've talked about this is what you brought before us in regards to the MOU, the amendment that we made with Foxhall. This is standard procedure, what everyone has seen in the newspaper and everything, correct?
Correct. The document that you said to me that everyone was concerned about is an ad with respect to the issuance of bonds by the Development Authority. And it's standard procedure in the sense that whenever bonds are going to be issued in the state of Georgia, there's a complaint like that filed. It's called a validation proceeding. And the purpose of filing that complaint and getting the proceeding started like that, it doesn't, even though it's styled the state of Georgia versus, it's really a complaint to validate the documents that are involved in the transaction. And it requires a public notice to be filed like that, because if you read near the end of the notice, it states that anyone has a right to intervene in the proceeding or come to the proceeding and object to it. And it doesn't obligate the county. The county is not a defendant in a lawsuit. None of the documents obligate the county in any way to repay the bonds. And in fact, in this particular instance, it's kind of a bond for title transaction. So the bond is going to go to one entity, and the bonds are going to be repaid from the proceeds of the project. In this case, there'll be lease payments to the Development Authority, which will be used to pay the debt on the bonds. And even the Development Authority won't be liable. I mean, the documents are pretty, I think when you, and this is just the ad, but when you see the documents, they're very clear that the, any recourse with respect to those notes is limited to the lease proceeds. So I think that's kind of a high level of what that is. But these are really just the bonds that are being issued in order to get the tax abatement. So that's the structure of how the tax abatement is done. And I think it's common throughout Georgia. I think the Development Authority has done it many times before. Chris can speak to that. I know every other jurisdiction in the state of Georgia which issues bonds, they commence it with validation proceedings. And those validation proceedings require the public notice. So, Chris, I've talked enough. I'll let you say anything further you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Commissioner Alcarez, and good afternoon to the Douglas County citizens. Michael is correct. This is a common practice. It basically falls in line with the official code of Georgia in how development authorities, how communities are able to allow for property tax incentives, and those property tax incentives are drawn from the theory of the state gratuity clause, which prohibits a local jurisdiction from just allowing an entity to not pay property taxes. The property has to go in the name of a tax-exempt entity, and that's what the Development Authority is. And so when Michael mentions a bond for title, the Development Authority takes title to the property and then in essence leases that property back to the operator. So any company that we have pursued a property tax incentive or granted a property tax incentive for here in Douglas has gone through this process. Our local counsel, Joe Fowler, is the one who handles the validation proceeding on behalf of the Development Authority. He basically goes and reiterates the things that we have spoken to either the Board of Commissioners or the City Council about when they voted to agree to have that company be on the tax incentives plan. And then we present that in a legal proceeding, a judicial proceeding in front of a judge. And then that's when the project is validated. So that's what this filing is. It is very common practice. There are no obligations of any local jurisdiction or the authority in this regard. It is just a part of the state process.
Okay. And either one of you that can answer this, because this was asked of me, is we know that the Development Authority is its own entity. However, they are in our budget. You know, we do give them, I think it's $300,000 a year. So I had some citizens asking me if we're providing funds to the Development Authority, then how are the taxpayers not liable if something was to happen since they are their own entity?
Well, you know, as I stated earlier, under the terms of the documents, there's no liability to the Development Authority. I mean, the recourse for repayment of the bond is going to be the lease payments that the Development Authority will receive once it leases the property back to the entity. So even the Development Authority doesn't have won't have any real liability. These are what you call revenue bonds, and typically when you see that designation on bonds as opposed to general obligation bonds, the revenue bonds generally imply that the bonds could be secured strictly by the revenue that's being received with respect to the project. If you saw the word general obligation bond, then I think that would indicate that the bonds are being backed by the full faith and credit of whoever the issuer is. But that's not the case here. This is a revenue bond. I think that the title says that, and I think that, and the documents, more importantly, bear out that that's where the recourse is. So the Development Authority doesn't have this thing. But, you know, if you assume, let's just take it to another transaction where the Development Authority has done something that creates exposure, the Development Authority is liable for that, and not the county. The county wouldn't have any obligation to backstop the Development Authority. Now, to the extent that the county has given funds to the Development Authority, and they should be earmarked for particular purposes. They're not earmarked, and there's just free funds out there. Maybe someone could go after them, but that's because those funds are, that would be the sole thing they could go after, and even those wouldn't be available to be used in earmark.
And could either of you just explain what the no audit means in regards to this?
The no audit?
Yeah, no audit.
That is language that was required by the state, I think maybe 8 or so years ago in these agreements. And so if you look at all of our filings over the last several years, they all have the same language in there. It is just a part of the state process, but this is purely a bond for title and no bonds for finance. What does happen, and just so the public knows, we do have a compliance practice with every project that is on a property tax incentive. So every year they have to report in, they have to make certain commitments. So, and it varies per the project, but the typical commitment is that it's the number of jobs, the average wage, and the capital investment. And so from a compliance standpoint, we ensure that all those things are being met. Those reports are due to us every April 1st. And if those companies are not meeting their requirements, then there are clawback provisions that are in each agreement for those companies. But this is not an exchange of dollars. This is purely a bond for title. And in this particular scenario, they will be paying kind of a discounted amount of property taxes over a period of time, which is in essence their lease payment.
And just one last thing for you, Chris, this is going to be for you, is a lot of the citizens weren't able to see when you brought this before us in regards to the MOU. Could you just explain what that amendment was that you brought before us?
Yes. So the Foxhall is basically taking a two-phase approach in their development, whereas everyone is very familiar with the fact that we were providing incentives for the creation of a Westin Hotel and Conference Center. But because of kind of changes in the bond market, and the demand that they have on property, they wanted to kind of insert a phase to where they could expand existing facilities, build additional villas, and build a boutique hotel. And so what we did was we said, okay, we'll take that, investment into the project, but note that we really were providing these incentives for the full-on Westin Hotel and Conference Center. So our clawback provision was that after a period of 5 years, I believe, I think it's 5 years, that if the financing was not in place for the larger hotel and conference center facilities, then we would then draw back the length of the incentives that we offered. We would draw back the property tax abatement, and we would draw back the hotel motel tax provisions in the deal. So the amendment was centered around those factors. And then we applied a memorandum of agreement that articulated those points.
Okay. I'm looking here. I don't see any additional questions being asked here. No, Phyllis, I know you're in the background. Do you see anything? Have you seen anything or any questions from our public?
There's just one. I believe this one says, isn't the county responsible for development authority debts?
So clawback provision was this.
I can respond to that question. Unless there is some specific agreement pursuant to which the county agrees to backstop the development authority debt, then the county would have no obligation in the absence of such an agreement. If an agreement is, if it's necessary at some point, the development authority to get the support of the county with respect to any particular debt, then that's going to have to be a separately negotiated agreement or document of some sort. It's not by general law allowing for the debts of the development.
That's correct. Just so the public knows that the development authority, the term authority is an important part of our name. We are actually an entity of the state, and so the state authorizes the creation of development authorities. We're an entity of the state with certain provisions of things that we're allowed to do. However, from a governance standpoint, meaning our board of directors, all of our board of directors are appointed by the local governments. So we have a City of Douglasville Development Authority whose board is appointed by the City of Douglasville, and in the Douglas County, the Development Authority of Douglas County, whose board members are appointed by the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. The Douglas County Board of Commissioners does provide some funding to the authority. It does not encompass the entire funding of the authority, but they do provide funding to the authority. And we do economic development activities on behalf of the county, but as an entity, we are separate and apart from the Douglas County Board of Commissioners in that regard.
Okay. And that's the same question that you just sent to me, correct, Phyllis?
Yes, sir. That's the same one.
Okay. That's what I thought. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing anything else here. Just like I said, I just wanted to make sure, unless anyone hits one pretty soon, that is just wanted to get this explanation out to our citizens, because like I said, I was getting quite a few phone calls of everyone concerned that there was something obviously going illegal, or we were having some sort of problems with Foxhall development. And if you read this notice, if you see it, especially on Facebook, it gets, I can see where it can make, someone wonder if we are actually being sued by the state. Attorney, you and I talked about that, but I got one more question here is, why don't, okay, here's one that says, why don't you want the audits from the Foxhall, especially after they're passed?
Well, I think an audit language in the notice refers to a statutory provision that addresses an audit of the expenditure of the bond proceeds. And in this particular instance, the bond proceeds are, we're getting the title to the property, and they are using the bond proceeds with respect to the development. But we get the title for the property, and if things go wrong, ultimately we have the title to the property, and they will, that'll be the protection that the authority will need to secure itself. But in terms of the audit of how they spend their money, I think it's kind of standard not to do those audits in these bond for title situations, because it's really designed to provide a tax break to them. But I don't think there's any real I think it's standard not to audit how that's done, because there's a budget and everything. Chris, I'll let you speak more to that about
and
your standard practices.
Right, and that's why I mentioned the compliance component, because really the only involvement we have in this transaction is the property tax incentive. And so it's really a matter of them meeting their commitments. So, our audit per se is ensuring that they're adhering to the commitments that they made to us. We do not have any financial involvement in this project. And so to that regard, they are getting private lending. So there is a private bank financing that is funding this expansion. And so all of that really for the lender is just ensuring that, that they're building, what they said they were going to build according to the funds, and that they are paying the debt service to the lender on that debt.
Yeah, thank you for answering that, because that's what I was just about to bring up to you, that you and I discussed this in depth to ensure that they were getting their own private financing. And two, if they are, them being a company, if they're getting their own private financing, it's kind of hard for us to say we're going to come in and do an audit, since we are, not financing anything for for Foxhall. I think, is there any other questions, Phyllis, that you see?
No, sir, not at this time. I don't see any more questions. Thank you.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. I'm going to give it just one more moment to see if anyone sends anything over, but if not, I want to greatly appreciate your time, and especially on kind of a short notice here. Like I said, this is something that our citizens were very concerned about. Wanted to make sure that we got these questions answered for them, and it looks like I have someone. Is that Miss? I see a number here. Someone's. Am I the only one seeing that? Someone's got a number on the screen here, and it's all black.
844-352-97617. I see those numbers. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir. It seems that someone was trying to speak, but I wasn't hearing anything.
There may
okay.
be
Yeah. Okay. But again, I thank you for your time. It's very important that we be transparent during this time for our citizens. You guys have, I really appreciate you, like I said, at last moment, taking the time out for me, because I know you both have 3 o'clock meetings, and we kind of put this together kind of quickly. Communications, thank you so much for your help. You guys are fantastic.
We're certainly happy to help, Commissioner. And if you have further questions, or someone needs additional backup or detail with respect to anything, later we're happy to provide it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I appreciate you being very detailed as well, because it gave everyone a great understanding for this. Because a lot of our citizens don't get a chance to see our commissioner meetings and don't understand this, and then we see this out, in the paper or on social media. It can cause a bit of a stir. And like I said, right now, we want to be very transparent as a county and keep things rolling in a positive direction. So I appreciate both you gentlemen. And if there be no other questions, nothing else, then we're going to go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. And I want to thank our citizens again who did turn in. I know that there was some who were going to, I guess, maybe be watching this to maybe put this later on social media to help explain more in detail. But again, for all those who took the time to participate today at 2:30, thank you. I know everyone has busy schedules, and again, I appreciate my two guests for helping me, and also our communications department. If there be nothing else, thank you guys again for taking the time for our citizens.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Sir, have a good day.